Hello and very warm welcome to Emotionally Yours with Pratik, a special podcast dedicated to Mission 1 Million by Quantum Foundation. As we all know, Project 1 Million is about 1 million emotional literate Indians, under which we have various initiatives. Emotionally Yours with Pratik is a podcast dedicated for one such initiative where I interview some of the most renowned faces in the society and talk about their journey related to emotions. With me, I have got Dr. Lakshmi Kumar, who's an academician of repute and who has received an award at the hands of Governor of Maharashtra for one of the 50 most influential educationists. A very warm welcome to you, Lakshmi.
Thank you, Pratik.
So it's a pleasure having you on our podcast. Now, as we know that this podcast is about emotions and your journey. So, Lakshmi, let us try and understand from you in terms of your overall journey of life so far and how at different stages you've overcome difficult emotional situations. So right from the beginning, whatever you want to share, please feel free.
Thank you. I think what a pertinent topic in today's context of the entire world. I have had a very, very intense roller coaster life.
Mm-hmm.
So my birth has been a traumatic arrival.
Traumatic arrival?
My father died on the same day I was born. Out of trauma, and my father met with an accident. And so my mother entered a trauma-induced bipolar.
Trauma-induced bipolar, which is one of the most dreadful psychological disorders.
Yes. And of course, in the 60s, our understanding and knowledge was very minimal.
Mm-hmm.
We knew that it was trauma. We knew that it was intense, a shock. A young widow at the age of 30 with 3 children. Mm-hmm. And I'm newborn. So we knew those sketchy understanding of life and its impact on emotions. But my entire life has been also traveling along, decoding my mother's mental health challenges. I think probably only in the 80s, when I was pregnant, when I was going to deliver a child, my mother attempted suicide second time, is when a psychiatrist put his hand and said, this had invoked all the subconscious. She saw your full-term pregnant stomach and she unleashed her subconscious. So you can imagine the depth of mind that we so undermine. That's the first time we got a formal diagnosis. Till then we thought she's just depressed and she's just suicidal. But it is Dr. Pant who said this is bipolar. Mm-hmm. And in the 80s, also by then, I had studied medical and psychiatric social work so that I understand better what is this whole challenge about psychology, mind, the psyche. Mm-hmm. So that's when we really began to comprehend the depth of this bipolar and what to approach and how to manage and what cannot be managed. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, I'm a living example of a bundle of packaged life.
My God, carrying such a heavy baggage on yourself of father's death onwards till childhood, growing up with a bipolar disorder mom, and then again that erupted after so many years, which is very difficult to manage when you yourself are pregnant at that point of time. Fortunately, by then you could really reason it out. And here you shine from that to where you have been one of the most influential educationists. So when you see this journey, I'm sure this emotional roller coaster ride, in the retrospective, when you look at it, I'm sure there would be many moments of despair, many moments of helplessness, many moments of anger, many moments of frustration, again, some hope, excitement, love put together. So it could be a complete emotional collage, isn't it?
Absolutely. While you are growing up, you watch your social context. A young, beautiful widow. And what the society grants her. And that you have to fight out, because education is the only ticket for your upward mobility. There is no other way to climb out of this dark hole. And you also have your larger questions of existential questions. And also, why me? Why my father gone? And why my mother hit the, the ceiling, so to say. And you don't have answers for a lot of this as you grow along, because this is a very silenced topic in our family for a very, very long time. And we were just about surviving. We were just about managing to keep our head above the water. But in all this, I must credit my mother for her constructive and obsessed manic state that clearly defined the boundaries of what it is to be successful, what we need to do, how we need to live up to the dreams of my parents. So she was an extraordinary disciplinarian, and who very clearly defined the boundaries of high quality education and very, very clear disciplined life, and also constantly reminded us that we don't have an option. So I think when you don't have an option, you also start building survival and thriving mechanisms of life.
So when you talk about survival mechanism, thriving mechanism, because there's no option, okay, vis-a-vis now, you are actually heading a school where there are students who come who have a lot of options, who have a lot of distractions in their lives, and then still a larger emotional health of the children, as well as the teachers who's teaching over there, as well as overall academics. Now the focus has come in for better emotional health. When you look at it where there was no option but only doing something for a survival, vis-a-vis these children where you have seen that there are a lot of options but still the emotional well-being is under addressed, how do you feel about it?
They don't have an option. There are different traps.
All right.
Yeah, they don't have. I mean, they have to live up to the social media images, the peer pressure, the parental expectations, and the kind of competitions that they have to, for every seat there is a 100,000 waiting. So they are also actually in some ways, ironically, in very similar, no option but different traps. So in that sense, I actually can recognize and empathize with their journeys, and that I constantly remember, and in some ways I feel pretty scared that the young people today have tremendous pressure of the size to the looks to the hair color to the eye color to how far and how long are you on the social media to all their Instagram posts to, so they are living a life of huge expectations and traps.
So the challenges remain more or less similar.
Much more,
and much more complex because of so many peer pressures and social pressures and so on and so forth. Now that's very interesting.
And I must say that options don't necessarily mean joy. Options also mean complex decision making, confusion, and influences. I mean, we had a very linear trajectory of life. You finish school, grade 12, and undergrad, postgrad, get a job, get married to someone that your parents selected or you selected, and have children. And it's been a very clearly templated trajectories. Whereas today, your son, for example, will have to live up simultaneously multiple options and always have this option A and B, and probably sail on many boats, and the fear of falling between the boats is much high. So for me to head an institution and watch my young people struggle with, and sometimes not even well articulated struggles, is a very important reminder for me that I can't assume their life is much easier because they have 25 biscuits to choose from in a Walmart store. No.
Oh. So the problem of abundance is more complex than the problem of
Absolutely.
Scarcity.
Yeah.
All right. So the problem of scarcity to the problem of abundance, the movement has been that way. And I'm sure COVID has impacted the academic fields as well. In fact, much deeper than the most of the other fields like industry or agriculture or so on and so forth. So last 2 to 3 years, what are the changes that you've seen in the emotional patterns of the teachers, the parents, the students, so on and so forth?
So let me just talk about teachers. I think for the first time, my teachers felt exposed and vulnerable because there were multiple pairs of eyes evaluating the teacher's accent and dress and content and knowledge and also ability to manage the classroom. They were nearly exposed to the parent evaluation, and very quickly a lot of parents judged. And I think that really unnerved my teachers, and not just my teachers, all over the world teachers quit because
Teachers quit?
Yeah, because you've been constantly criticized because there is a classroom in every living room that happened. So there is a huge teacher exodus. So that's one of the things that really was the outcome. And of course, nervousness and anxiety and sense of inadequacy. And there is constantly a fear that somebody will catch you not knowing something. Okay? So that's one of the scenarios unfolded.
What you're saying is the margin of error was minimal.
Very, very, very. And I don't think anybody realized it. I mean, sometimes parents are sitting behind the camera, behind each of the, those
Students.
laptops and the digital device. And the teacher is the only visible person. The teacher had no option to switch off the camera.
Oh.
Yeah, and whereas you had 35 blank, screens, and you don't know if the students are there, not there. And sometimes in the early years, entire family was there. There is always someone who makes fun of your accent or your content, or that, but my child, you haven't bothered to answer. My child has been raising the hand. So you always felt like you're going to fall out on somebody's metrics. And then you had students in the initial stages. Yes, there was a little bit of an excitement, but very quickly the disengagement, and they began to vanish, and they began to feel like a lack of connect with all adults on the screen and their classmates on the screen. And also they were witness to a lot of drama at home, lot of fear of losing loved one, fear of parent losing a job, and a lot of family dynamics. Everything unfolded, and suddenly here is a student who would have been out from 8 to 3 to a school, was witness to everything that was happening, and that also began to add a lot of
challenges as an emotional
and concerns and emotional challenges. And then you have parents who probably have had their own anxieties, their loss of jobs, or their worries about the loved ones, people who got ill, and that also they watched this whole school drama unfolding in their living room, and they really didn't know what their role is. So they began to become parallel teachers. So this whole thing got quite messy. rather than what we would like to believe as the seamless digital transition. That
It was never smooth and
no,
seamless,
and
for sure.
because there were too many emotions, there were too many dynamics, there were too many people involved in this.
So the biggest stakeholder number had complexed this entire transition, and once they're back again, post-COVID, I mean, things are still settling down in terms of the emotional roller coaster.
Oh yes, oh yes. One of the things that kind of became a cause and effect is also that there was huge learning gap, and students completely, disengaged themselves. Many of them just kind of made a presence for attendance, but were never there. So you ended up with a bunch of kids with huge learning gaps, and 2 years some of them had not met each other. So they looked like strangers to each other, and that social skill of connecting and interacting took a while. And also, a lot of children had gone through a lot of losses of their loved ones.
Yeah.
You know, a parent to a sibling to a grandparent to very dear friend or heartbreaks. So all this kind of again came up when they came back to school. But I must say that coming back to school was a very big relief for all of us, including the students, because I think there was this, if it's anything that COVID reminded us, that at the center of education is the connection, the people connect.
Absolutely.
And without that, you don't make miracles.
Absolutely. I wouldn't have agreed more on that because I have seen that myself. Okay, when during COVID, my children were on online classes, etc. To the extent that my daughter postponed her bachelor's decision by 6 months only because it was an online classroom, saying that she would rather go after 6 months to the university and sit in the physical classroom session. So I completely agree with what you're saying, that missing out on the social connections and all other things, and a lot of peer learning and social learning opportunities.
And then all learning happens only when there is connection.
Absolutely.
Connection over content, connection over context.
Very connection over content and context. Very, very important things. A lot of learning happens when you start emotionalizing it.
Yeah,
when you start loving your subjects. And that's where it is. I would like to take a little detour from our talks and tell you about how education was when I was in the school. A lot of pressure was not from the parents, but I would simply put it as parents were minimally involved in the entire process, and it was the teacher's word which was final word. To now, the parents themselves coming up as somebody who has paid the fees and is expecting returns immediately on the fees being paid. I mean, the consumerist attitude that we talk about. Okay, I'm sure you must be finding that there's a complete gap in understanding what the child's real talent is, the strength is, vis-a-vis what the parental expectations from the school as well as the child are. And all of these talks during parent-teacher meetings, etc., are very highly emotion driven. Okay, so when such difficult situations come in, how you normally go about in terms of telling the parents, look, the expectation is unreasonable, you're preparing them for the world that doesn't exist anymore, and now the content and the context, as you rightly said, is completely different.
See, I don't want to compare our childhood with our students' childhood because the context has changed.
Yeah.
Yes, our parents didn't know what class we studied in, what subjects we mastered in. Whereas today, young parents want to be engaged parents. Unfortunately, that engagement just moved to umbrella, helicopter, and snow plowing parenting. And that is visible in all spaces, not just in the schooling. It's almost like as if they genuinely believe that by controlling the environment, they will be able to fix the child. And I don't think any amount of rationalizing will sink in until some reality checks in. that I think often comes when the young child is adolescent, is when they realize that abhi kuch nahi kar sakte hain. So I think the whole idea that I have to be this snow plowing parent to be a good parent is a myth, and it's a myopic understanding of parenting. And you have all kinds of parents.
Yes.
And interestingly, like today, I just said to them that you became a parent without any qualification. So now
that's important.
yeah, and now you are becoming a parent only as an in-service training or in-service reflection. And there is a lot of wisdom and gyan available. And parents who are willing to understand are the ones who are coming to our awareness program, mental health program, or life skills program, or parenting program. And that's 20-30% of the parents. All the other parents give it a skip for real issues of the child, and they show up when there is a board exam orientation, how should the paper be evaluated, or whether what will be the scores. So they come for what they think is a very significant part of their life. I guess you take them for who they are, and you keep, bajawing your bhajan of, mindful parenting, and work with one at a time.
That's very interesting perspective, where you talk about your expectations need to be validated against the natural talent and the liking of what it is. And during your talks, you just mentioned about something that you've spoken in terms of evaluation is given more weightage than the actual cognitive development of the child. So how do you make them understand that the cognitive development or emotional development or an overall development is much more exhaustive, much more comprehensive as compared to the evaluation that you see that these are the grades and this is how my child is scoring?
When I run a school, I have to understand that what's in my realm of control and influence. Thankfully, I have students in my space. So work with the students, build their resilience, build their emotional well-being, give them support when they need it, provide counseling opportunities, create a sense of flexibility and inclusion, and don't be so worried about trying to change the whole world, if it means including parents. But parents see the effect on their child, and they slowly and steadily enroll in our programs and initiatives. But don't worry about what you can't change. You have 100 things that you can change. Focus on that.
Absolutely. And that was the beginning of you implementing the new education policy. I'm sure there would be a lot of paranoia attached to it in terms of how it's going to work from the parent side, in terms of, how are we going to evaluate the progress? How are we going to really look at, these are more important subjects than the other ones. So there's nothing called as an important or not so important subject, but it is more to do with the child's liking. Now that change was very, very difficult for a lot of parents to accept. And how did you drive? Because I have not seen many schools implementing new education policy, and yours could be some of the first ones, I guess.
See, there's one thing that we must appeal to with parents is the emotional appeal of their child. Because every parent believes they have the best child in the whole world. And it's true, right?
Yeah.
And we also need to grant parents the fear of unknown. Because I have had the privilege of having training, webinars, reading, access to global education, whereas parents don't have that. So it's my responsibility to take them from where they are rather than condemn or be very frustrated with what they have. And when you have that respectful, enrollment for parents actually trust you. Let me tell you that. I mean, they have given the best child in the whole world to us for 8 hours from the most vulnerable age of 2.5 years. And it's no small feat.
Yeah.
We need to become worthy of that trust. So when you build that trust connect, parents are willing to sit and listen. Parents are willing to say, okay, Lakshmi Di, I may not understand, but I believe you. And I know that you will take my student, my child in the right direction. I think that's again for me as an institution, trust is the core. And you must build trust, you must be worthy of trust, and that you must have your words and actions aligned. And then it's not a very difficult job. It's not very difficult to enroll parents. And a lot of parents very, very well informed, but very sweetly say, yes, I see where you're coming from. And you also have a professional, integrity to exercise on. And they respect it. They respect you.
So fear of unknown onwards, there are a lot of fears that the parents carry, and that is replaced by the trust that they trust their student, their children with the school, and that's where the entire transformation begins.
Yes, like today a parent got up and said, what kind of an exam they will write in grade 11. I said, but why are you worried?
Yeah.
You just be a parent. Let the child do the writing of exam. And I keep saying to parents, be a lovely parent, see if you can give a fairly conflict-free environment, war-free homes, and we will do the role of the professional educators. And let's not swap place.
All right. Now, that's really important because, what we have been hearing is if the environment at home is right, it will foster that kind of an environment, would actually foster the talent that the child is with. And once he or she comes to the school, you would ensure that the natural talent or the right kind of things would be given as set of values in education subjects.
Oh yes, I mean, as a mental health professionals, I can see a child from a distance and say, this child has a very harmonious home, or this child is actually torn with a lot of, conflicts at home and disharmony at home. I've seen it. And you can make out. You can really make out.
Great. So, having been on the other side, I definitely understand why and how important it is. Now, let me take you to a lot of activities that you do in terms of overall child development, where you talk about the tour of Ladakh, where you take them to the school that is supposed to be very high on innovation, etc. Now, students go there, would appreciate innovation, and there's a lot of innovation that this new young generation comes with. But there's very less acceptance to that, saying that, hey, as you rightly said, the linear trajectory, okay, still some of the parents would prefer their children to be a part of the linear trajectory than the exponential, rocketing trajectory that you talk about. So how do you really deal with those aspects?
To be honest, innovation is not everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah.
But absorbing an exposure to innovation is everybody's sponge. So pour that, okay? Most importantly, to create an environment where very clearly learning can happen outside the classroom and beyond textbooks. And that's why the Sekmals and the Andamans and Bastar or Dharavi.
Dharavi. I was very impressed with that Dharavi initiative, by the way.
Yeah, and very important is for our students to know that eventually we will have to coexist.
Yeah.
Whether you're in Americas or Africas or Antarcticas, the globe will have a global warming and all of us will drown if we don't save it. So I think create that awareness for the students. But I think very, very important is to be able to kind of indicate to the parents that don't be in a hurry to expect the fruit. And I say that to my teachers also. Because we are so used to immediate feedback. I taught a lesson and then I give an assessment. And if my class has done very well, and if it hasn't done very well, well, I must reteach or, well, whatever. But these kind of life skills take sometimes for it to germinate beyond my lifetime. And I see this as both a parent and a teacher dilemma. Today, I bring up my child with certain values. I don't need to expect that tomorrow the value should be demonstrated. The value may get demonstrated much after I'm dead and gone. That's the same with teachers. That's the same with education. Today, I've given you an exposure. Let's say to Dharavi, to a recycling idea. It doesn't mean tomorrow everybody is going to become a champion of recycling. Yep. But you never know, of the 105 that I've taken, probably after 27, 28, 30, 40 years, there is one child who says, you know what, I had that lesson from, and I had that exposure. So you again must trust the process of what you put in. That you put in a wonderful seed, and you built a lovely environment, and that you've created a nurturing, enriched, ecosystem, and somebody will blossom.
Absolutely. Learning does not come with an expiry date for sure.
Yeah, and that means you have to have both patience and trust, and especially the humility to know that what I have put in today is never going to go waste. It will happen beyond my lifetime. But who says everything must happen in lifetime to get me a sense of gratification? So I think this humility is important for educators and as parents. And as I often say, that the best marketing is what you say about me after I left the room.
Absolutely.
And it's the same whether you're a parent or you're an educator, is that what does the student embody? And what does what does the student stand up for? And they are genuinely our ambassadors of our values, our beliefs, and our assumptions. And we must trust in what input we give.
Excellent. So what we're talking about is the right input will bring the right output. And you've not only restricted them to Bastar or Dharavi or Ladakh, but definitely, Sweden, Finland, and various other places. And that really gives
and
them...
just Baramati,
And Baramati, yeah.
And I want us to be very clear, that we have right in Balewadi a twinning program, a mental health care center, residential care like, the one that, Pratiti, and elderly care like, what's it, organized?
Atashri.
No, the one, Tapas.
Nivara.
Tapas, I think.
Tapas, yeah.
And you're talking about, or a de-addiction center like Muktangan, or an adoption center like Sofosh, and our collaborative work with Leela Foundation for Girls.
Yeah.
What we are talking about is that all these dots will connect you to make you a genuinely compassionate and empathic citizen. And I think that is the real goal of education. You can have certification from anywhere, but only a school like Orchid would give you the exposure where that you say that, going to Dharavi and you suddenly realize, oh my God, my stereotypes, where did I get it from? Or when I go to mental health residential care, I say, anybody can trip off.
Oh, yeah.
And that we need to manage, holistic well-being. Or you go to Muktangan de-addiction center and say, oh my God, successful guy and he became an addict. So it's not like only the losers become an addict as you would understand it from a Bollywood film, So I think education must give them tools to connect with people who are from different social contexts, question the status quo that we've been given, and to build new narratives. And that, that I can have a child who is an adopted child, or I can have responsible sexual relationship with someone which is based on consent and respect. And that, unwanted babies are not birthed only by people from the other side of the river.
Yeah.
So I think these three things that are very, very important for us to provide them an ecosystem and tools to question the status quo, to create a respectful connect with the larger community and build new narratives because they are the ones who are our future.
Absolutely.
If you really want to look at gender issues, it's they who will be able to change it. So I think what we require is to give them that opportunity.
In fact, when you talk about the gender issues, I've seen that the stereotypes about LGBTQ community a few years before vis-a-vis what it is right now has definitely changed, and that also needs to be included because everything has to be an inclusive education that we talk about.
I mean, we had a student who gave a TED talk from a queer community.
Oh, wow.
And if schools don't open up the platforms, who else will? The schools have to be the space of democratizing and equalizing and, real change agent.
Fantastic. From, the journey of being torn into two different things to, the change agents to bringing the change in the academic scenarios, you've really, really come a long way. It's lovely listening to you, Lakshmi.
And I have to say one thing. This is so important. Life will give you lemons. Yeah, you make lemonades, lemon pickle, whatever. But remember to seek help and heal yourself. And I think that is where your strength lies. That all the lemons can make you a fantastic person when you come out of it without the feeling of sourness and bitterness. And that requires a very conscious healing process, and I did that.
Lovely. Now, before we end, here's a last question from my side. There are many emotional dilemmas that you come across. For example, that you've just spoken about opening up and democratizing. At the same time, you have to, look at probably fears, probably fallouts and reactions of parents and teachers and students and so on and so forth. I mean, these are the most important stakeholders in the entire process. How do you really go about balancing these things? And in terms of overcoming emotional dilemma, which I'm sure with your experience you have learned how to deal with it, some tips for our audience if you would like to.
You don't balance. You just live it through.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in what they call the work-life balance. You work and you live. And I don't think we have always the control and luxury of choosing the dilemmas. They will come your way. Whether you want to sit down, calm yourself, and think it through. And very recently, when I was attending a retreat in Dharamshala, the Lama said something very beautiful, and I think that kind of could summarize what you're aiming at. He says, when you close your eyes and meditate, the typical recommendation is to, not dwell on. Dwell on, typically. And then, of course, you kind of try to shut out everything, voices and noises and senses and everything. But then when you open your eyes, they're all waiting to grab you.
And they come with the vengeance.
Yeah. What he says is dialogue. Discuss with yourself. Reflect with yourself. Converse with yourself. Do not avoid. Don't shut out. In that quiet moment, actually think about it actively. And actually strategize. Because when you open your eyes, you have a greater clarity and you have some solutions or some more confusions to deal with. And I think that's how life is. That you can't just suddenly have this 10 days of I'm shutting myself out and you come back and then everything is catching up. The life is about thriving in the here and now.
Fantastic. Living in the moment.
Yes.
And
the here and now will have every morning a gratitude list of what is going well. and also a gratitude list of what is not going well, because in every what is not going well list, there is a learning waiting for you.
Great. That's really, really wonderful listening to your views on emotions, on emotional well being, and on various aspects of academics, parental issues, students' issues, so on and so forth. It was really nice listening to all your views and having a great talk with you. Okay, thanks a lot for coming over, and a big, big, big thanks for contributing with your rich experience and views and opinions. Thank you very much.
I loved it. I loved every moment of it. Thank you.
You.
Thank
It was
you.
wonderful. Thank you. So, Lakshmi, as per our tradition, may I request you to sign this mug for us and do the honors?
Absolutely.
And in turn, I will be signing this mug for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Again, it was wonderful talking to you, and we look forward for more such insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you.